Now, let me just turn to the other side, who are decrying, rightly, violence. During this last summer, they sat by, and when buildings were being burned, when businesses were being looted, when the streets of America were in a conflagration, Nancy Pelosi said, people will do what they're going to do. The New York Times had a revolt to prevent law and order being reimposed on the streets of New York City. Nicole Hannah-Jones could not today, if she were to be consistent, which of course she isn't, call this violence. At New York Magazine, I was not allowed, I literally had the word riot removed from my copy. There is a policy at Vox Media that if you loot, smash windows, take over the streets, and do so for political purpose, it cannot be described as a riot. The media institutions I've lost almost any respect for. The New York Times is increasingly an extraordinary propaganda operation. Where do I go? Where does anyone go to find out what happened yesterday and trust them? The Democrats have openly argued for packing the court. They want to and may try to reorder the situation so that, and they want this very much, so that Republican institutions like the Electoral College and the way in which the Senate is apportioned so that the middle of the country, even though outnumbered, still has clout in our Senate system. They also, large numbers of them, denied the legitimacy of the 2016 election. Let's not forget that. Stacey Abrams believes that her election was invalid, that she is the rightful governor of Georgia. Many leading Democrats have regarded this president as illegitimate. They have regarded Kavanaugh and her name escapes me, Amy Coney Barrett, as illegitimate members of the court. This is the end of liberal democracy, Shadi. It's gone. Let's be real. It's gone. The procedures that require mutual cooperation, that liberal democracy is absolutely fundamentally based on the willingness to let your opponents win and to treat them as legitimate winners. Now, Trump has been an absolute disaster in all of this. But the idea that the left is somehow got clean hands in this is preposterous.
Well, this is where we agree for sure.
Yeah,
because,
okay.
As you know, I mean, I've been a pretty outspoken critic for, the last 4 or 5 years, in saying that the left and Democrats to various degrees never came to terms with the results of the 2016 election. And we don't have to kind of, rehash the various examples of, say, Hillary Clinton calling it a stolen election until fairly recently in 2019. And, accusations coming from pretty senior figures like Harry Reid about the Russians tampering with the vote tally, so on and so forth.
The number of people I know and socialized with who, when push comes to shove, really believe the last election in 2016 was a fraud is innumerable. I've occasionally get into a slight conversation. No, these people are completely conspiratorial about that. They have the added dose of claiming treason and in league with a foreign power. My former colleague John Chade at New York Magazine said that Trump could have been a Soviet agent since 1987.
I remember that was wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, no legitimacy given. Now, I happen to think the Mueller investigation was completely legitimate, in as much as if there is a real question here, and there are real questions, it should be investigated. And it was, but not without most of our major media institutions propagating conspiracy theories that were truly unhinged.
Yeah, and so on this point, I mean, both sides are hypocritical when it comes to respecting democratic outcomes. And for me, this is a non-negotiable. There's something to be said for the sanctity of democratic outcomes. When you stop respecting them, democracies crumble. But I also I don't want to make to positive moral equivalency between what happened on the Capitol and what some Republicans, especially in the House, have been doing. That's worse than what Democrats did
Absolutely.
in 2016 and 2017.
Absolutely.
And I think we all have to be very clear about that.
I have been clear about that for a long time.
I'm just saying because if people doubt that, on my end, I just want to make that clear. But there is a lot of hypocrisy to go around, and I don't feel very comfortable bringing up the riots in various cities over the summer, because that does strike me. There's a risk of going into whataboutism, but there is an inconsistency here that leftists or Democrats who are calling for a very stern response from security forces and from the police, as if they want the police to shoot into crowds. I mean, where they would have never suggested doing that for unrest and violence and property damage in other circumstances.
They celebrated it.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, that inconsistency, so the question is, the fact that everyone seems, or many people seem, hypocritical and inconsistent. I should also say that it bothers me when I see Republicans or Trump supporters who I follow on Twitter and who are, sometimes reasonable and all that, when they say, oh, well, Democrats did that to us after the last election. They didn't accept the results then, so why should we accept the results now? Which is an absurd logical stream of thinking to me, because if you thought it was bad then, wouldn't you want to redouble your opposition to it when you see it the second time around? I mean, it's such a weird way of looking at politics,